Cancer, if you paused here, I truly believe it wasn't by accident. There are days when everything around you looks the same, yet something inside you feels different, a feeling that's hard to name. As if you've just stepped out of an old version of yourself without getting the chance to say goodbye. You notice you're enduring less, pushing yourself less, explaining yourself less. And the strangest part, you're starting to hear your own voice more clearly. Lately, you may have noticed this too. Some doors quietly closing, some relationships slowly drifting away, some things you once fought so hard for, suddenly losing their grip. Not because you've grown cold, but because you've grown awake. This video doesn't promise miracles. It asks one honest question. If your life is quietly changing tracks, do you have the courage to stop going back to the old one? And right now, I want to begin with what matters most. The real reason you didn't arrive here by chance. Cancer, have you noticed something quietly strange lately? Everything around you seems to be moving the same way. People still say the familiar things. Life keeps rolling forward on momentum. And yet inside you, you're no longer moving to the same rhythm. You sit in a conversation and your heart feels distant. You walk into a place that once felt like home, and suddenly you feel like a visitor. Not because you're unstable or changing for no reason, but because something deeper is unfolding. Your timeline is shifting. Slowly, gently, but in a way that cannot be reversed. This feeling doesn't arrive loudly. There's no big event, no dramatic shock. It comes quietly. Like the moment you realize you no longer react the way you used to things that once made your heart race. Like the way you begin to choose silence more often, not because you have nothing to say, but because you no longer want to say what isn't true. Like the exhaustion that comes from having to explain who you are, what you're doing, where you're going. Not because you're avoiding life, but because you're stepping out of a current that no longer fits you. The collective current runs on habit, on doing things because everyone else is doing them, on the fear of being different, the fear of being left behind, the fear of not being recognized. That current is heavy. It repeats itself. It feels safe in a familiar way, but it's also deeply limiting. And Cancer, with your sensitive heart and your long memory, you lived in that current for a very long time. You learned how to adapt. You learned how to endure. You learned how to stay, even when you were no longer being yourself. Then one day, without announcements, without noise, something inside you slipped out of sync. You started moving slower, but feeling more deeply. You chose silence over argument, distance over people-pleasing, honesty with your emotions even when it meant temporary loneliness. That wasn't rebellion. That was coherence. It was the moment when what you think, what you feel, and what you do began to stand on the same side. And as that inner alignment strengthened, the old timeline could no longer hold you. A timeline cannot support a frequency it was never built to carry. So the things that once mattered deeply begin to lose their pull. The goals that once kept you up late no longer warm your heart. Relationships that once felt like anchors begin to feel heavy. You don't resent them. You don't reject them. You simply no longer belong to them. And that realization can feel disorienting. It can make you doubt yourself. But Cancer, this is not losing your way. This is recalibration. As coherence rises, you begin to hear more clearly what is truly yours. You're no longer easily pulled by noise, by expectations, by old roles. You start to see how long you lived for other people's sense of safety while neglecting your own peace. That awareness doesn't arrive as a loud declaration. It arrives as a pause long enough that returning to the old way now hurts. You may notice changes in small choices, not replying right away, not making promises too quickly, not forcing yourself to smile when your heart isn't there, not saying yes to things that make you contract inside. They seem small, but they're signs of a timeline rewriting itself, not through drama, but through steady honesty. And that is deeply Cancer. You don't need noise to change your world. You only need enough truth to stop betraying yourself. Stepping out of the collective current inevitably brings a sense of dislocation, because you're one beat ahead. Not better, just different. A different frequency, a different pace, a different way of seeing. You stop chasing validation the way you used to. You begin asking deeper questions. What am I living for? What am I holding on to only because I'm afraid to let go? Who am I being loyal to, and how long have I abandoned myself? If you're here, hearing these words, there's something important you need to know. You are not wrong. You are not behind. You are not lost. You are simply leaving a current that was never meant to carry you forever. And ahead of you, even if you can't see its shape yet, there is a lighter space waiting. A place where you don't have to brace yourself. You don't have to prove anything. You don't have to become who others expect you to be. Slow your breath for a moment. Listen to the very real sensation in your chest. Because as this story continues to unfold, you'll begin to understand why the fatigue, the emptiness, and even the silence you're carrying are not signs of collapse, but signs of a deep restructuring quietly taking place within you. Cancer, if lately you've been feeling tired in a very different way, let me say this slowly. That heaviness doesn't mean you're getting weaker. It isn't a sign of decline, and it certainly isn't proof that you're failing at life. It feels more like a house being dismantled from the inside. Old walls taken down gently, quietly, to make space for a new structure that the eye can't see yet. You may be sleeping enough, maybe even more than before, but when you wake up, your body still feels heavy, as if it's carrying something you can't quite name. You can sit still, rest, do nothing at all. And yet inside there's a sense of emptiness. Not empty because something is missing, but because what once filled you no longer fits. The old motivations that once pushed you forward, that pulled you out of bed each morning, that helped you endure so much, they no longer work. Not because you've lost your worth, but because you're no longer living on that kind of energy. Your body is deeply honest. When an old identity no longer fits, it refuses to keep operating the same way. When a system built on pleasing others, on quiet sacrifice, on enduring just to be loved is no longer viable, the body slows down. It hits the brakes. It pulls energy away from performing. It speaks through fatigue, saying it's time to rewrite everything from the ground up. And for Cancer, this runs even deeper. Because you've carried emotions that were never yours. You've shouldered burdens simply because you believed they were your responsibility. You learned to be strong quietly, to not complain, to handle things on your own. But now, even that familiar strength is being taken apart, layer by layer. You no longer have the energy to pretend you're fine. You no longer want to prove how much you can endure. And the truth is, you don't have to endure anymore. This exhaustion isn't an accusation. It's an invitation. An invitation to return to yourself in a way you never have before. Your energy is being redirected, pulled away from always being right, always showing up, always playing the role. It's moving toward integration, toward healing, toward listening, toward asking questions you once avoided because you were afraid they would shake everything loose. Who am I if I stop bracing myself? What remains if I stop pushing? How do I live if I stop placing myself last? These questions don't arrive loudly, but they shake the foundation of everything old. And that's why you may feel less drawn to things that once mattered deeply. Not because you've become cold, but because your heart is being released from old silent agreements that said you had to give endlessly just to stay. Now, something inside you is learning a new rhythm. A rhythm not built on effort but on alignment. Not measured by how much you drain yourself, but by how much peace you can sustain. This restructuring isn't comfortable. It can leave you disoriented. When old motivations fall away, it's easy to believe you've lost direction. But in truth, you're standing in a very sacred space. A space where the old has already left, and the new is still forming. That space doesn't ask you to do anything. It only asks that you don't rush to fill it with what exhausted you before. Allow yourself to slow down without guilt. Allow yourself to be quiet without apology. Allow your body to lead while your mind is still confused. Because when a new system is being built, the real danger isn't fatigue. It's forcing yourself to operate by an outdated design. You don't need more caffeine right now. You need gentleness. You need honesty. You need space for what's forming inside you to breathe. And when you sit with this tiredness long enough without running from it, you'll begin to notice something subtle. That emptiness isn't empty at all. It's open. Open to a different kind of connection, a different kind of presence. A feeling that's quiet, fragile, and deeply real. As if an old room inside you has finally been cleared, light beginning to enter through windows that were never opened before, and you're about to realize that you were never abandoned. In the stillness, you're being guided toward a calm space where you'll understand why the loneliness ahead isn't a loss, but a separation from noise, so you can finally hear the very private call of who you truly are. And in that quiet space, a very particular feeling begins to surface. Not loud, not dramatic. You simply notice that you're alone more often than before. Not because no one is around, but because you no longer want to stay in connections that require you to shrink. Cancer, this loneliness doesn't feel like the old sadness that once frightened you. It's quiet, it's deep, and it's honest enough that you can no longer lie to yourself. You can sit in a familiar room, listening to familiar stories, and suddenly feel like you're standing at the edge of it all. Not because you're arrogant, not because you believe you're better or different. Simply because the frequencies no longer meet. The connections built around an older version of you were once necessary for survival. But now, when you no longer have to survive by enduring, those connections naturally loosen. No one did anything wrong. No one abandoned anyone. Nothing was taken away. The resonance simply changed. Silence enters your life in a strange way. At first, it unsettles you. You were used to having someone listen, someone understand, someone to lean on, but when the silence stays long enough, you begin to realize it isn't empty at all. It's like when the noise stops, and for the first time, you can hear your own heartbeat. That heartbeat, fragile at first, carries a truth you forgot long ago. You don't need to be understood by everyone. You only need to stop betraying yourself just to belong. Cancer lives through feeling, so you sense this shift more deeply than most. You can no longer tolerate half-truths. You don't have the patience for unclear bonds where you're left guessing your place. Your body responds before your mind can explain. Your chest tightens at words that aren't true. You feel drained when you smile just to get through. And you begin to step back, not to punish anyone, but to protect the purity that's quietly forming inside you. There are evenings when you may feel as if you're standing alone before a vast, open space. No familiar sounds to cover it. No old roles to hide inside. Just you, exposed, but unmistakably real. And if you're brave enough to stay there, you'll realize you were never abandoned. You were separated from the noise so your signal wouldn't be lost. This loneliness doesn't pull you down. It straightens your spine. It brings you face to face with questions you once avoided by staying busy, by taking responsibility for others, by caring for everyone but yourself. When there's no one left to please, you finally hear what you need. When the outside noise fades, your intuition no longer has to shout. It whispers, and this time, you hear it. During this phase, another subtle truth begins to appear. Not everyone who leaves is a loss. Some distances arise so you stop giving energy to places that no longer nourish you. Some doors close so you don't return to spaces that made you contract. This quiet doesn't weaken you. It clarifies you. Clearer boundaries, clearer values, clearer awareness of what truly deserves your deeply feeling heart. You begin to understand that not every connection needs to be kept. Not every familiarity needs saving. And not everyone can walk with you to where you're going. That understanding doesn't make you colder. It makes you honest. Honest with your feelings. Honest with your limits. Honest with the truth that you can no longer live by placing yourself last. And when you sit in this stillness long enough, another feeling slowly emerges. Not rushed, not loud. As if someone gently places a hand on your shoulder, not to pull you anywhere, but to remind you that you are seen. Not in the way humans see each other, but in the way a frequency is recognized among endless noise. You don't need to speak. You don't need to prove anything. You only need to stay true to what's real inside you. And from here, when silence no longer scares you, when loneliness no longer carries the weight of abandonment, you begin to sense a very different movement forming. A guidance that doesn't come from outside, but from deep within. And you'll understand why, in the time ahead, what you once called intuition will no longer feel vague or uncertain, but will become a quiet, steady force leading you forward, even while fear is still present, even when the road ahead hasn't yet found its name. And in that very moment, you begin to notice something incredibly subtle. There is a force guiding you now, not loud, not demanding, but steady in a way that feels almost uncanny. It doesn't ask you to believe without question. It only asks that you don't turn away. That force is your intuition. No longer a passing feeling that comes and goes, but a quiet, grounded current moving through the smallest choices of your day, through each pause before you say yes or no. Your intuition is no longer walking behind you, trying to remind you. It's walking ahead. It already knows what has expired, even while your mind is still trying to hold on. And because it moves ahead of you, fear begins to get louder. Fear isn't bad. It's just late. It comes from memory. From moments when you were hurt. From losses you didn't expect. From choices that once went wrong and cost you something real. Fear wants to protect you by keeping you where things feel familiar. It demands proof. It demands certainty. It whispers, wait a little longer, look for one more sign, get one more confirmation before you move. But some movements in life don't wait for understanding. They begin the moment something inside you is ready, even if your thoughts are still scattered. You think you're standing between two paths, one safe, one risky. But the truth is the old path has already begun to close, not with noise, not with drama, but with the simple knowing that you can no longer live there. You can go back, but every step feels heavier. Not because you're being punished, but because that rhythm is no longer yours. Cancer, you haven't become reckless. You've become honest with what you feel. Some choices look irrational to others, yet your chest feels lighter just thinking about them. Some opportunities look perfect on paper, but your body says no before your mind can explain. Before, you would have pushed forward, afraid of missing out, afraid of disappointing someone, afraid of being wrong. Now, you pause. Not because you're afraid, but because you hear another voice, deeper, quieter, and it doesn't disappear. Fear tries to rush in first. It speaks loudly. It paints worst-case scenarios. It asks what happens if you fail, if you lose what you have, if no one understands you. But intuition doesn't argue. It doesn't need evidence. It simply repeats a familiar sensation in your chest. If you don't move, you will keep living a life that isn't truly yours. And at some point, the question stops being, are you safe, and becomes, are you real? You may not be able to name where you're headed yet. You may not clearly see who you're becoming, but you know with certainty that you cannot return to the old way. And that knowing doesn't come from thought. It comes from your entire inner system quietly agreeing. When what you think, what you feel, and what you do begin to stand on the same side, even while your hands still tremble, that's intuition taking your hand and guiding you through a decisive turn. You don't need loud courage, you only need enough honesty to not betray that signal. Even while fear is still present. Even while your heart feels unsteady. Because some steps don't require certainty to begin. They only require that you don't turn away from yourself. And when you walk like that, slowly, quietly, something unexpected happens. Life begins to move with you. Not all at once, not dramatically, but clearly enough that you can feel yourself being supported in a way you've never known before. And from that support, you'll soon see that the outer changes, the sudden doors closing and opening, the disruptions that once looked like chaos, are quietly rearranging the world around you to better fit the person you are steadily becoming. And then, as the movements on the outside become more visible, confusion may set in. A plan that once felt solid suddenly falls apart. A door you were sure was meant for you closes without warning. Someone who once felt close walks away in silence. From the outside, it looks like everything is breaking, as if life has suddenly become chaotic, disordered, even cruel. But Cancer, there is a very different truth hidden beneath that dust. Life is not destroying you. It is reorganizing itself. And this reordering doesn't ask the mind for permission, because the mind always wants to preserve what's familiar. Instead, it listens to your frequency. It adjusts to who you have become, not to who you once had to be in order to survive. When the frequency changes, the old structure cannot remain the same. Not because it was wrong, but because it no longer fits. Chaos only appears when you can't yet see the blueprint. When you stand too close, all you notice are the fragments. But if you stay calm enough not to rush and reassemble what's falling away, you begin to sense a different order taking shape. A lighter order, a more honest one. an order that asks for far less self-sacrifice. And that order needs space. It needs the old pieces to leave so it has room to stand. Here is where the warning lives. If you see every change through the lens of fear, you will cling to what has already expired. You will hold on to a job simply because it once felt safe, a relationship simply because it's familiar, a role simply because you've played it for so long, and each time you cling, you are not punished. You are simply more tired, because you're using new energy to maintain a structure that no longer supports you. The same is true with delay. If you linger too long standing in the doorway telling yourself you need more time, one more sign, one more reasonable explanation, that door will not get angry. It will close on its own, quietly, naturally. Life doesn't punish hesitation. It reorganizes. And when it does, the lesson often feels heavier. Not to hurt you, but to wake you up. Cancer has always known how to endure, how to stay, how to wait until the pain becomes unbearable before letting go. But this time is different. This time, you were shown the signal earlier. You felt the misalignment as soon as it began. And that is a kind of grace, because you no longer need to break in order to change direction. You are not being asked to become someone else. You don't need a dramatic transformation. The only invitation here is coherence. Coherence between what you know is true and how you live each day. Coherence between the rhythm you feel in your chest and the choices you make. When you choose that coherence, even if it's uncomfortable at first, your timeline begins to lock in. No more swaying. No more testing and retreating. Momentum forms. And when that momentum settles, you realize you no longer need proof. You don't need validation that you chose correctly. You don't need applause from the world. Because you feel a different kind of stability. Not excitement, not a high, but the feeling of standing in the right place. Like placing your feet on solid ground and knowing you don't have to brace yourself anymore. From here on, every small choice carries more weight. Not because of pressure, but because you are no longer choosing unconsciously. You begin to live present, responsible for the signal you broadcast. And when you live that way, life responds not with miracles, but with alignment. What arrives fits more naturally. What leaves does so more gently. What stays has the strength to walk with you. If you're listening right now and you feel your heart settling, less frantic than before, that is not an accident. It's the sign of coherence stabilizing. And when it does, one simple, profound truth becomes clear. You were never lost. You were only learning how to stop abandoning yourself one more time.